I had not watched the gate stone in years. It stood in the center of my great hall, the way it had stood for 11 generations of Calethorn kings, a rough arch of dark granite threaded with veins of moon iron, taller than 2 men, cold to the touch even in summer. My pack keepers maintained it out of habit more than faith. They oiled the hinges of the iron frame, cleared the ash from the activation channel, checked the rune carving each new moon for cracks. A gate stone of this age could splinter without warning. That was reason enough to tend it. That it might actually open for a fated mate. That particular hope I had set down a long time ago. The way you set down a sword you have carried too long and finally accept you will never need again. The seers had told my father, who told me, "She will come in the year of the double alignment, through the gate stone in your hall, and your wolf will know her before you do." I had been 30 when I first heard those words. I had watched 3 double alignments come and go since then. I was 60 years old and I ruled alone, and my wolf had learned, as I had, to carry the quiet without complaint. On the night of the 4th double alignment, a night I had nearly forgotten to mark, I was sitting at the long table reviewing border supply records with my steward Brant when the gate stone lit up like a struck match. Not the slow, ritual brightening of a standard activation. The moon iron veins flared white gold all at once, every thread of them, and the sound it made was not the usual low tone of a scheduled crossing. It was something I had no word for, a single note, low and clear, as if the stone itself had exhaled after a very long silence. Every man in that hall went still. My wolf, who had not stirred in months, came to his feet inside my chest. And then a woman stepped through the arch carrying a wicker market basket and wearing a linen apron with a smear of something green across the hem, and she looked around my great hall with the expression of a woman who has just realized she has walked through the wrong door. She said, "This is not Hareth Market." Her name, I would learn shortly, was Senna. She was from Vethrun, a border settlement on the eastern edge of my territory, 3 days' hard ride from Calethorn. It sat along the old trade road, and like most border settlements it had a gate stone, a small one, a way station arch used by pack messengers for quick crossings to the market town of Herath. She had activated it herself, using the common crossing token every settled family in the eastern provinces kept above their door. She had stepped through, she said, because she needed ginger root, dried calendula, and a new set of copper measuring cups, and the Herath market was the nearest place to get them before the first frost closed the road. She had walked through a gate stone 14 times in her life, she told me, and it had never done anything except deliver her to Herath. She was not frightened. This struck me more than anything else in those first moments. Most people who accidentally cross through a malfunctioning gate arrive pale and shaking. The disorientation alone is enough to knock a trained messenger sideways. Senna stood in the center of my hall, set her basket down at her feet, looked around at the 30-odd men who were staring at her, and said, quite calmly, "Someone should tell me where I am, and then someone should get me back." Brant looked at me. I looked at the gate stone, which had gone dark again, not the gradual dimming of a completed crossing, but the sudden extinguishing of something spent. My keeper of the gate stones, an old wolf named Corvin, who had served my father and now served me with equal stubbornness, crossed the hall at speed and pressed his hands flat against the arch. He was quiet for a long moment. The hall was very quiet with him. "It's sealed," he said. Senna said, "I'm sorry." The arch. Corvin turned around, and I had not seen that particular look on his face in a very long time, a look I associated with the kind of news that changes the shape of a day. The double alignment passed at the moment she came through. The gate sealed behind her. The reactivation channel is burned clean through. He paused. It won't open again until the next celestial cycle locks. "How long?" I said. Corvin looked at me steadily. 7 years. The hall made no sound. 30 men, all holding their breath. Senna picked up her market basket. She looked at Corvin, then at me, with the particular expression of a woman who is deciding whether the news she has just received is worth the energy of an argument. 7 years, she said. Yes, said Corvin. I came for ginger root and copper cups. Yes, said Corvin again. She was quiet for a moment. Then she set the basket back down. Then someone had better show me where I'm sleeping, she said, because I am not standing in this hall all night. My wolf had not moved since she stepped through. I do not mean he had gone still in the way of a predator before a strike. I had felt that particular stillness often enough to know its edge. This was different. It was the stillness of something that has been walking for a very long time and has finally, without announcement, arrived somewhere it recognizes. He was not poised. He was not waiting. He was simply present in a way he had not been in longer than I could name. I did not say this to anyone. I gave Senna a room in the east wing, warm, private, with a window that faced the herb gardens, and I told Marit, my housekeeper, to see that she had everything she needed. I told Brant to send to Vethrun by land courier in the morning, so that Senna's household would know she was safe and housed and expected back within a reasonable time. Then I went to my study, and I stood at the window for a long while looking at the dark shape of the gate stone arch visible through the hall doorway, and I thought about a prophecy I had heard when I was 30 years old. She will come in the year of the double alignment, through the gate stone in your hall, and your wolf will know her before you do. I had 3 double alignments in which to grow skeptical of those words. The first time I watched and waited and felt nothing. The second time I told myself I was a fool to watch. The third time I did not go to the hall at all. I sat in my study and listened to the stone remain silent, and then I went to bed. And by morning the hope I had carried since I was 30 had gone the way of most things carried too long, not shattered, just quietly set down. I had told no one the prophecy except Corvin, who had been told by the keeper before him and so already knew it, and Brant, who kept his counsel. I stood at my window and I thought, she came in the 4th year, the 4th double alignment, and my wolf, who had not so much as stirred for a woman in decades, had come to his feet the instant the gate stone lit. I thought it means nothing, a malfunction, a coincidence of timing. I thought, your wolf has not moved like that since you were young. I went to bed. I did not sleep for a long time. In the morning, she was in the herb garden. I came down early, before the household had fully roused, intending to walk the perimeter wall as I did most mornings, a habit from younger years when I had more enemies, and the habit had stuck long after the enemies thinned. Instead, I found the east gate of the garden open, and a figure moving along the beds in the gray early light. She had found, somewhere Marit, I suspected, a heavier cloak and a pair of worn garden boots, and she was crouching at the edge of the winterberry beds with a look of such focused assessment on her face that I stopped in the gate arch and simply watched her for a moment before she heard me. The herb garden was not in good order. My last head gardener had died in the spring, and the replacement I had hired was adequate with flowers and kitchen herbs but had no understanding of the medicinal beds. I knew the garden was struggling. I had simply not found time to address it. Senna, apparently, had found time on her first morning. She straightened when she heard my step on the gravel, and there was no startlement in her face, only a brief assessment, the same look she had given me last night when she decided an argument about the gate was not worth the energy. Your wolfsbane is too close to the Alicrest, she said without greeting. They'll kill each other by spring. And whoever planted your nightheel did it in full sun. It wants shade, deep shade, or it loses all its draw. Good morning, I said. A very small pause. Good morning, she said, with the tone of a woman conceding a point she finds unnecessary. Your herb beds need work. I know. Do you have a gardener who understands medicinal planting? Not currently. She looked back at the beds. I could fix the worst of it while I'm here. I have nothing else to do. Another of those pauses, this one with a slight edge to it. 7 years is a long time to be idle. I said, "You're a healer." "Herbalist," she said. "I'm not a pack healer. I don't set bones or run fevers. I grow things and I compound things, and I know which plant fixes which problem. And that is the extent of what I do. That is more than most pack healers in this region manage." She looked at me again with that same measuring quality, and I had the distinct and slightly unsettling feeling that she was assessing me the way she had assessed the herb beds, cataloging what was there, what was missing, and what needed work. "I'll fix the beds," she said, "if you give me full access to the garden and don't put anyone in my way." "Done," I said. She nodded once, the way a woman nods when a negotiation has concluded to her satisfaction, and went back to the winterberry. I walked my perimeter as planned. My wolf walked with me, attentive in a way he had not been in years, his attention turned always in the direction of the garden. 3 things happened in the first 2 days that I will tell you in order, because each one matters. The first, one of my younger pack wolves, a yearling named Dusk, barely a year into his shift, had been limping badly for a week. My pack healers had examined the leg twice and declared no break, but the limping worsened, and the wolf was in clear discomfort. Dusk had developed the habit of lying near the herb garden gate in the evenings, for reasons none of my people could explain. On the second morning, I came down to find Senna crouched beside him on the garden path, his foreleg resting across her knee, her fingers pressing carefully along the joint while she talked to him in a low, even voice, the way you talk to something that is frightened and needs to be told it is not frightening you. She had found the problem, a small stone fragment lodged against the inner joint, too deep for a surface examination, in 10 minutes. She spent another 20 removing it with a pair of fine instruments from a kit she had been carrying in her market basket. Dusk lay still the entire time, his head on the path, watching her face. When she was done, she told him to stay off it for the day, and he, impossibly, did. "How did he let you do that?" my pack healer asked me later, with an expression that suggested he was reconsidering several things about his profession. "That wolf doesn't let anyone touch that leg." I said I didn't know. The second thing, my elder council, 6 wolves who had served me for decades and who were not given to romantic notions about gate stones and alignments, came to me on the evening of the second day. Old Cress, who had white in her hair and a sharp eye for patterns, did the speaking while the others stood with her. "We have been watching the gate stone," she said. "And the moon iron veins are still warm." I waited. "A gate stone that is sealed after a standard crossing goes cold within hours," she said. "This one has been warm for 2 days. That is not a malfunction, Aldrich. That is a bond channel. The stone is holding a bond open." I said carefully, "What does that mean?" Cress looked at me with the patience of a woman who has known me for 30 years and does not intend to pretend she doesn't know what I already know. "It means the gate stone recognizes 2 fated mates in the same citadel," she said. "It means your wolf didn't settle last night for nothing." I said nothing. "We're not telling you what to do," she said. "We are telling you what the stone is saying." They left. I sat alone for a while. The third thing was small and private, and it happened that same night when I could not sleep and walked the long gallery above the hall and looked down through the high window, and saw that the herb garden was lit with a single lamp at the far end, and Senna was sitting on the stone bench in the middle of the beds with her hands in her lap, looking at the gate stone arch through the open hall door, the way you look at something when you are trying to decide what you feel about it. She sat there for a long time. I did not interrupt her, but I watched, and my wolf watched with me, and neither of us looked away. On the 4th day, I told her, "Not everything at once. I am not a man who does things in bursts when steadiness will serve better, and she was not a woman who would receive everything at once without closing the door on it. I knew this about her already, the way she assessed before she acted, the way she set her arguments aside rather than spend them unwisely. She had governed herself a long time, I thought. You learn to read that in a person. I found her in the medicinal beds, transplanting Nightheel to the shadowed wall, her hands dark with good soil, and I said, "There is something I should tell you." She straightened, waited. "The gatestone is still warm," I said. A pause. "Corvin told me. He came to see me yesterday." She turned back to the planting, and I could not see her face. "He told me what it means." "The Bun Channel." I let that land, and then I said, "Then you know more than I've told you." "Corvin is thorough." She pressed a plant into the dark soil with her thumbs. "He told me about the prophecy." I had not expected that. Corvin and I would, at some point, discuss the nature of thoroughness. "What did he tell you?" "That your seers said a woman would come through the gate in the year of the double alignment, that your wolf would know her." She patted the soil into place around the base of the plant, unhurried. "He didn't tell me the rest. I think he thought it wasn't his place." "The rest," I said, "is that the gate can reopen early, before the 7 years. There is a mechanism, old gate law, almost never used." I made myself say the next part plainly, because she deserved plainness. If two fated mates are in the same citadel, and if the bond between them is completed willingly, freely, with full understanding, the bond mark that forms carries enough energy to reseal the arch in the opposite direction. It opens the gate for one crossing. She was quiet for a long time, her hands still in the earth. "One crossing," she said, "meaning I could go home." "Yes." She sat back on her heels and looked at the plant she had just settled, and I watched her face, and I thought, she is doing what she always does, setting aside the argument that will cost too much to spend carelessly. "And you're telling me this," she said, "instead of simply not telling me." "Yes." "Why?" I crouched down to her level, which was not a thing I did easily anymore. 60 years of cold winters had opinions about crouching, and I said, "Because it is your gate and your home and your choice, and you should make it knowing everything." She looked at me then, not the cataloging look, not the assessment, something quieter. "You've been alone a long time," she said. It was not a question. "Yes." "And you still told me." "Yes." She turned back to the Nightheel, pressed the soil smooth. "I need to think," she said. "Take whatever time you need." She thought for 2 days. I gave her the space she asked for. I did not hover. I did not arrange to cross her path. I did not send messages or ask Merit to report to me on her moods. I had spent 40 years wanting this thing, and I was not going to crowd her now that it stood in front of me in gardening boots. My wolf was harder to contain. He wanted to be near her the way a compass needle wants north, not with urgency exactly, but with a persistence that had no off switch. I kept him occupied with the work of the citadel. I reviewed supply records and border reports and heard complaints from 2 pack heads about a boundary dispute in the southern passes, and I sat through all of it while my wolf attended to something else entirely. On the second evening, Cress found me in my study. "She fixed the winterberry beds today," she said. "I know." "And she rebottled your entire medicinal store. Merit says it was in considerable disorder." "I know." Cress sat down across from me, which she did when she intended to say something I might not like. "She's not afraid of the gate being sealed. I've watched her. She is practical about it. It is a fact. She has accepted it, and she is deciding what to do with the fact. She's not grieving. She is thinking." A pause. "That's a specific kind of woman, Aldrich. Grief would have made this simpler. Thinking makes it real." "I know," I said again. "Do you want her to stay?" I looked at my old elder, who had known me for 30 years, and did not ask questions she did not already know the answer to. "Yes," I said, "but I want her to choose it. There is no version of this where I want anything else." Cress looked at me for a long moment, with something in her face I did not see from her very often. 30 years you waited," she said, 4 alignments, and you told her about the gate." She deserved to know. Yes, said Cress, she did, she stood. That's all I wanted to say. She left and I sat in the quiet, and my wolf sat with me, patient as he had not been patient in a very long time. She came to find me on the third morning. I was in the armory, of all places, not a romantic setting for the conversation I suspected was coming, but it was where I went when I could not sit in a room without moving. The armory was work I could do with my hands, checking the condition of pack equipment, identifying what needed repair, what needed replacing. My hands needed to be occupied when my mind was elsewhere. It had always been so. She stood in the doorway for a moment, looking around with an expression that was new on her, not the assessment look, not the thoughtful settling look. Something less resolved, something that was still working itself out. I have a question, she said. I set down the shield I was examining. Ask it. She came into the room and she stood a few feet away and she said, Did your wolf know me when I came through the gate? Not after Corvin told you about the prophecy, not after the elders told you about the bond channel. At the very moment. Before you knew any of it, did your wolf know me? It was the most important question anyone had asked me in 30 years. I answered it without hesitation, because she had asked it plainly and it deserved plainness. Yes, I said, he went still, not the way he goes still before a fight, the other way, the way something goes still when it has arrived somewhere it recognizes. I paused. I have not felt that since I was young. I had stopped expecting to feel it again. She absorbed that. Her hands, which had been holding the edge of her cloak, loosened slightly. I fixed the night heel, she said, and the wolfsbane and the winterberry. And your medicinal stores. I know. Those beds will be better by spring, if they're tended through the cold months. I know that too. She was quiet for a moment. I want to see the gate stone. We went to the hall. It was mid-morning and the hall was mostly empty, 2 pack members eating late, a young keeper polishing the iron frame of the arch from habit, who stopped when we came in and quietly removed himself. The gate stone stood in the gray winter light from the high windows, dark granite and warm moon-iron veins, still faintly luminous even in the daylight. Senna walked to it. She stopped in front of it, not reaching out, just looking. The moon-iron veins pulsed once, very softly, the way a candle flame acknowledges a breath from across the room. She looked at it for a long time. Then she said, without turning, Tell me what it would look like if I stayed. I came to stand beside her, not close enough to crowd, close enough to be heard clearly. You would have the herb garden, I said. Full access, full authority. The medicinal beds, all of them, including the ones in the lower courtyard that no one has tended in years. You would have this citadel and whatever freedom you wanted within it and beyond it. I would not command your days. I paused. Vethrun would know you were here and well. There would be land courier service. You could write and receive letters. In the summer, when the southern roads are clear, you could travel if you wished. Another pause. And I would be here, not crowding, not commanding. Here. She was quiet. I have been alone a long time, I said. I am not a simple man to live near. I am set in my ways and I have opinions about supply records that most people find tedious, and I go to bed before the second hour of night. I heard what I was doing and stopped. I am telling you the truth of it, not the portrait. She turned then, and her face, which had been careful and quiet and working itself out, had arrived somewhere. Your wolf knew me, she said. Yes. Before the prophecy, before the elders, before all the explanations. Yes. She reached out and put her palm flat against the gate stone. The moon-iron veins blazed. Not the sudden white-gold flare of the first activation, something warmer, more sustained, a deep amber light that moved through every thread of the arch in a slow, certain wave, the way light moves through water when you disturb it gently. The 2 young pack members at the far table came to their feet. Corvin appeared in the hall doorway, and his old face went through several things at once. I felt the bond before I saw it. It started as warmth at the center of my palm, and then it moved up through my wrist, and it was not painful. It was the opposite of painful. It was the feeling of a thing settling into a place it had always been intended to fill, a key finding a lock that was made for it, a door closing on a room that had been open to the cold for too long. The mark formed slowly, the way a scar forms in reverse, light gathering rather than fading, a pattern of interlocked crescents that meant, in the old moon language, recognized and claimed and arrived. I looked at her hand, the same mark, mirror perfect. She looked at it for a long moment. "I've never done anything by accident," she said softly, to neither of us in particular. "I stepped through gate stones 14 times without incident, the one time I go through to buy ginger root." "In copper cups," I said. She looked up at me. "You mentioned copper cups the first night." Something moved in her face that I had not seen there before, not the assessment, not the careful reserve, something lighter. "You remembered the copper cups." "I remember everything you've said." The amber light faded slowly from the gate stone, settling back to its ordinary glow, warmer now, permanently warmer, the bond channel fully open and no longer seeking. The hall had gone quiet the way halls go quiet when something definitive has happened, and everyone present understands it without being told. Senna looked at the mark on her palm. "I need copper cups," she said. "I will need copper cups here." "I'll send to Herath," I said, "in the morning." That evening my elder Cress came to the hall, as she often did before the night meal, and she found us at the long table together. Senna with a worn leather journal open before her, making notes in a small careful hand about what the herb beds would need in the spring, and me with the supply records I had not finished 3 days ago, listening while she occasionally said things like the Alicrest will want clay soil, not sand, and who approved this drainage channel. It's running directly into the medicinal roots. Cress stood in the doorway for a moment. Then she came in without comment, sat at her usual place, and called for the evening meal to be brought. Nothing else was said about it that night, because nothing else needed to be. I will tell you the rest in less time than it took to live, because it is not the kind of story that needs ornamentation. Senna wrote to Vethrun, her household, an old man named Pell who kept her garden there, and who she described as opinionated about drainage channels and wrong about everything except onions, wrote back that he would manage, that she should not worry about the leaks, and that she should make sure the new Citadel garden wasn't being run by idiots. She wrote back that she was handling it personally. He wrote back, good. She spent the winter in the medicinal beds, and by the time the frost broke in early spring, the lower courtyard beds were producing again for the first time in years. My pack healer, who had initially regarded her with the professional wariness of a man whose territory was being reorganized, came around entirely by the 3rd month, when she identified a lung sickness in 3 younger pack wolves before the fever declared itself, and treated them with a compound she made from the nightheel and dried Alicrest, and something she called northern root that she had brought in her market basket, and then propagated from a cutting in the glass house. She stopped what would have been a pack sickness, he told me, with the tone of a man who has revised several opinions recently, 3 weeks ahead of when I would have caught it. "Yes," I said. "You should give her the full medicinal authority," he said. "I'm not proud she knows more than I do about the plants. The bone setting I'll keep." "She'll appreciate that arrangement," I said. "She said something similar." He smiled a little ruefully. "She's already told me." The bonds settled the way, Cress told me. Bonds settled when they were the real thing, not in a single moment, but in the accumulation of ordinary days. It was the first morning she woke before me and left a cup of something hot on my study table without being asked, because she had noticed I always wanted something hot before the day started. It was the evening I came to the herb garden without a particular reason, and found her in the middle bed, arguing in a pleasant voice, with Pell's latest letter about whether fennel belonged in a medicinal bed or a kitchen garden. And I sat on the stone bench and listened. And my wolf settled into the autumn quiet the way a body settles into a chair by the fire after a very long road. She found her copper cups in the end. A trader came through in the early spring with a cart of household goods from the south, and among his wares was a set of 10 copper measuring cups in graduated sizes, and Senna saw them from 20 feet away and walked directly to the cart and said, without preamble, "I'll take those." And the trader sold them before he understood what had happened. She kept them on the shelf above the compounding table in the herb workroom, and they caught the morning light. And some days when I passed the door of the workroom, I could see the light moving on the copper and hear her voice inside working through a formula. And I stopped in the doorway the way I had stopped in the garden gate that first morning. She heard me. She always heard me. "Supply records," she said without looking up. "Done. Then come in and hold this." I went in and held whatever needed holding, and she compounded, and the winter light came through the workroom window, and my wolf was quiet in the way that was not absence but arrival. The way a thing is quiet when it has been walking for a long time and has finally come home and found the door open and the fire lit, and the room exactly as it had always been supposed to be. She had come through the wrong gate to buy ginger root and copper cups. She had stayed for the herb beds, and for an old wolf who remembered everything she said, and for a bond mark on her palm that she sometimes touched in the evenings when she thought I wasn't watching, and I always was. 40 years I waited. She arrived on the 4th alignment, in a linen apron with green on the hem, carrying a wicker basket, and the first thing she said in my hall was, "This is not Herath Market." She was right, it was not. It was better.